Hi, welcome to another free art lesson with Wilson Bickford. What I wanted to show you today was how to get some realistic bark texture on birch trees. I do have a book out through Northlight Books. It's Wildlife Landscapes You Can Paint. And you'll notice that one of the paintings that I have is of a woodpecker on a birch tree, downy woodpecker. And I actually have one of those paintings here. You'll notice that this is a pretty authentic look for birch bark, realistic. A lot of that's done with a palette knife. And I've got my own way of doing it that I've kind of discovered over the years. And I'm just going to kind of scrape on some of this texture with a palette knife. And I'll show you how to do that. I've mocked up a background here just to etch out the shape of the tree that I wanted. I'm going to use a number 10 Winsor Newton bristle flat. And this part of the canvas is dry at this point. There's no paint on there. I did put a little bit of green just to kind of box that shape in so we could separate that. I'm going to take this brush. I've got some Grumbacher Alkyd medium. Now any clear oil painting medium that you use would work for this. The Charbon Quick Dry, anything, any oil-based medium, a clear medium. This happens to be the Grumbacher Alkyd medium. I'm going to put a very thin coat of this on the birch area only. The only paint that will be on here will be a glaze of some blues and some blue-gray to represent the shadows within the core of the tree and some of the black markings. So there won't be any white in the tree. The white that's going to be in the tree is just the canvas that shows through this medium. If I put white on the tree when I go to put the dark markings on that the birches are known for, it turns gray because it picks up the white. So I don't want any white paint. And even though there's no paint in this area to say, per se, to speak of, it's still going to look like it's painted because I do have the medium on there. So it's not like it's going to be a flat, dull area on your canvas when you're done. But I'm going to take this medium, scrub it in very thinly, get up close to the edges, and I'm going to start picking up some ultramarine blue, just a little bit. Now you have to determine in your mind where the light source is coming from. I'm going to say it's coming from the right. So I'm going to take just a little tinge of ultramarine blue. Notice it's very wishy-washy, more medium than paint. And I just want almost like a thin glaze. I'm going to put a lighter blue on the very back side of the tree. This will be reflected light. Remember I said I want the light coming from the right. So I'm going to put a reflected light down the back side of the tree, like bounce light, what's commonly known as bounce light or reflected light. And it's just where the sky reflects onto the back of an object on the opposite side from where the highlight goes. And you want this to be fairly subtle. You use less reflected light than highlight as a general rule. But I want a little bit of that so it starts giving it a little sense of shading. To actually make that look rounded now, I need a deeper shadow, which would be the core of the shadow, which would run down from the middle of the tree over into the shadowed side, into that reflected light. So I'm going to take a little more of the ultramarine blue, little touch of burnt sienna. These are all transparent colors, by the way, so that's why this works. I don't put any opaque pigments in here. These are all transparent colors. These are the Charbon paints I'm using too, by the way, the burnt sienna, the ultramarine blue, the intense black, which we'll be using in just a little bit here. I want a darker shadow on this core. This is known as the core of the shadow. The darkest part of the shadow is where it turns from the light into the shadow. Then as it goes away from that, you pick up the reflected light. I'm just making this a little darker. Okay, something about like that. Now I want to bleed this over into that reflected light and just let those mingle together so it's a gradation from darker here in the middle of the tree to lighter on the edge. So I just kind of work that together. I want a little bit softer edge against the white highlight. So I'll take a paper towel here and wipe this off. And just kind of blend that. It'll blend very easily because we have that medium on there. It's not like a dry canvas, you got the medium. Okay, now this is the fun part coming up. Birches have that really gnarly, dark, twisted, curly bark that they're noted for. I'm going to take this Creative Mark S59 palette knife. I'm going to take a little bit of this intense black, pull it out in a very flat pile. I want to show you want to start with very little paint. I'm going to pull it out very flat. You'll have a lot of paint on your blade, up the length of the blade, which you don't want. So I'm going to wipe that off on a paper towel. And I'm going to cut off just a small little sliver. The smaller the better to start out, until you see what you're getting. The idea is to hold the blade very flat and just skim it across that tree. And you'll have to pick up paint quite often because we're using very little. But I just keep picking up more as needed. And I just skim it. You can probably almost hear my knife scraping the canvas at this point. And I kind of do it in a semi-concave curved shape so because it lends a little more roundness to the tree. So I just kind of scrape it on like this. What I'm relying on is the fact that it's going to pick up the bumps in the weave of the canvas, which it does. It rides on those high spots in the texture of the canvas. This will work on a smoother surface like a panel. If you're painting on a more or less like a masonite panel, smoother panel, but it doesn't work quite as well. It will work, but you won't get quite that rough texture like you get with the weave of the canvas. And I just kind of randomly put it here and there. One thing you want to watch is it's easy to get square knife edges, and by that I mean this. If you take it like this and you constantly just touch the knife down and then pull, you're just going to get a square edge everywhere you do that. So to avoid that, I use kind of a sweeping motion. I start the knife in motion usually before I actually touch the canvas. I don't touch it down and then move it. I actually have it in motion and I graze the canvas like this, and you tend to not get quite so many of those square edges. So basically you just kind of fill this out to whatever looks good. Some birches have a lot of this dark, some of them have very little. So you just do it to the point that it looks good to you. And this is actually starting to look pretty good to me already. I'm just about zeroed in. I would be finished with this. If I was incorporating this into a painting, I'd be just about done right here. It really won't take as much as you think. Now that's a pretty realistic looking birch tree, don't you think? The only thing from there is you have to determine what your subject was going to be, whether it's a cardinal or a woodpecker, cardinal chickadee on the branch. Put your limbs on, and that's how you get the realistic bark look. I hope you enjoyed this. Try this out. It works great. Catch you next time.